I'm going to take you through a very quick journey of 3 phases of the legal and policy framework in Europe that has led us to where we are now going. Phase 3 is the direction of travel. It's looking a little bit to the future. Phase 1. Phase 1, I put it here as starting 2011. 2011 was the end of phase 1. 2011 was when we got the European, the Cross-Border Healthcare Directive. It was the birth of the eHealth network, but it was really the beginning of recognizing that European citizens have the right to travel. And if they have the right to travel, their health data really needs to at best travel with them, or at worst be available when they get to where they're going. And that was really what we did in EPSOS. It was the beginning of that recognition that health data, if we're going to make the right to cross-border care real, and the European Court of Justice created through a bunch of legal decisions the right to cross-border care, if we're going to make it real, we really have to support that with data and technology. That came to fruition in 2011 with the Cross-Border Care Directive, and it is still the baseline for an awful lot of what we're doing now. Most of what is actually being taken forward in the European Health Data Space Regulation is grounded within the 2011 directive. Phase 2, and so that was a very quick phase 1 because of time. Phase 2, we've moved on from one directive to an awful lot of legislation. And don't be frightened, I'm not going to go through all of this legislation, but what I wanted to do with this was really give you a picture of where, as we are now in the middle of phase 2, we are surrounded by a whole bunch of legislation, which I've tried to depict here as a sandwich, and it's a very important sandwich. The top piece of bread is embedded in Article 168 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. That is the part of the treaty that says the European Union shall protect the health of its citizens, but how that is done will be up to the member states. And this is one of the biggest challenges in everything we do in regulating healthcare in Europe. It is something that member states have the control of, have the budget for, and decide exactly how to do it, but it has to be done within that ambit of the European Union's capacity to protect public health. It is underpinned in the lower piece of the sandwich, in the lower part of the bread, by 2 often competing aspects also in the treaty. Article 114, which is the article on the internal market. Everything we do in healthcare involves the movement of either people or goods or services. We need clinicians to move across border to provide clinical services, and they need to use electronic health records, medicines, and other devices, which are goods that can be traded on the internal market. So you have the internal market. When we have digital health, we throw data into it. That data has to be protected. It is something which is sensitive. It needs to be protected, but it also needs to flow. Remember the 2011 directive, if we want patients to move, their data has to somehow be available when they get to where they've moved to, and ideally move with them. And in between that, we now have a wealth of legislation covering cybersecurity, covering everything that you see in here, the pharmaceutical legislation, which is sandwiched between these two. And that this is the phase we are in at the moment, in phase 2, where we are really beginning to find our way throughout this, and where we are beginning to recognize the importance of the European health data space. So in 2020, about 2020, we began with recognizing that GDPR, lovely as it is not ideal for healthcare. It doesn't allow data to flow, and it most certainly didn't allow data to be used for secondary purposes, for research, be that clinical research or research to develop new technologies. It didn't allow for that. GDPR was hampering healthcare and digital healthcare, and so the idea of the European Health Data Space and the European Health Data Space Regulation was born. And it was built on the recognition that data is the fuel of better health services, that data needs to be interoperable and of good quality, and it needs to be available. And that is really the heart of where we are at the moment in phase 2, where we are now with the European health data space coming along. And I don't want to go into detail on this slide, but I want to draw your attention to a key thing. In the middle, you see 4 people carrying the letters EHDS for the European Health Data Space Regulation, and they're carrying locks that are open, because what they have done is they have really tried to open health data and open it on 2 levels. For primary use, for caring for patients now, and for secondary use, for caring for patients in the future, and for developing new products. I can and I have spent hours talking just about this slide. I'm not going to do it. But I think what we need to take away from this is that the European health data space is the tool for opening data so that it can drive the change that we all want to see in digital health. And sitting at the heart of that is the concept of data altruism, which is the capacity of people to make their data freely available for use to help others, primarily in the secondary use domain. The European health data space, as we all know, is not here yet. I was going to take the slide out, but I was asked to keep it in just to remind us that actually the European health data space won't be fully here for at least another 10 years. But we're on the way and we're traveling in the right direction because we're opening the locks while still protecting the individual. And if you go back to that slide with all the bubbles in it, we are trying to create a really good relationship, a marriage of 3 between Article 168, letting member states do their own thing for healthcare, Article 114, making sure that we have a proper internal market in healthcare services and goods, and Article 16, protecting the interests of the individual in the privacy of their data. And for me, that is the heart of what digital health is all about. And once we can create that happy marriage between 3, might not agree with everyone, but once we can, then we'll have achieved digital health. And that's really what takes me to where we are now, the new horizon. And the new horizon is, what is artificial intelligence going to do to change all that? How is that going to, if you like, put that data on steroids, really make it really work for the digital health age so that we can come to the point where I hope we eventually get to, where we don't talk about health telematics or e-health or digital health, and we just have health that is powered with digital solutions that people want to use because it's the sensible and right thing to do, and because it's part of how they expect their healthcare services to be delivered. Nobody in this room would use a bank that doesn't offer e-banking. Nobody in this room should be willing to use a health service that doesn't use digital health. And I'm not going to go through this. This is the AI Act, just to tell you that we're doing everything to put the right regulations in place, and that we are recognizing that medical devices need to be changed, the medical device regulation needs to be changed, and the pharmaceutical legislation. This is all coming in the future. The European Union is recognizing that the legislation needs to change so that we can continue this journey, moving from a time in around 2011, where we recognized that electronic health records and platforms were part of the solid foundation, to the phase where we are now, where integrated digital health solutions are slowly becoming a reality, and looking ahead to the future, where with AI as the power of it, we can really advance to the next phase.